Hey everybody, hope you're doing what you can to get through the world's longest week this week. Alex Kirshner back again to pick week 10 of the college football schedule for Odds Checker. I'm going to start us off with the game that has been on a lot of people's minds and will probably be on a lot of people's television sets come Saturday night. Of course, Clemson at Notre Dame. I'm taking the Irish here, folks. I'm taking Notre Dame plus 6.5, though I don't think they're going to win the game outright. I feel good about Notre Dame getting more than 6 points here, mainly because I feel good about Notre Dame's defense. I think that given the circumstances facing Clemson right now, with a true freshman quarterback, even if he's a great one in DJ Uiagalelei, making his second career start against a defense run by Clark Lee that can draw up some pressures, that's pretty sound on the back end, and that is playing at home in a big spot and has played in these kinds of big games before. I think it's a tough spot even for the greatest true freshman quarterback in the world to come into. I think that Notre Dame on offense is going to struggle, but can move the ball a bit more than it did in the playoff against Clemson a couple of years ago when obviously the Tigers sort of embarrassed them in Dallas. I think that Notre Dame has the pieces here to keep this game competitive, and particularly with Trevor Lawrence not playing. Don't think they're going to win, but I do think that they're going to play him hard. And can cover if they're getting more than 6 points. I would watch that number. I waited for it to go up from about 5 to 6.5. Maybe it touches 7. Maybe you want to be careful and wait until then. But getting 6 or more, I like the Irish on their home turf. Elsewhere in the ACC, remember Notre Dame is an ACC team this year. My Pitt Panthers visiting Florida State in Tallahassee. I got Florida State right at the open at +2 in this game. Florida State is now a small favorite. I watch every Pitt game because I'm from Pittsburgh. I love Pitt, and I've watched them all my life. They are not in good shape right now. This is not a good football team right now. Not only because Kenny Pickett, the starting quarterback, is injured, but because the defense is deteriorating. They lost one of the best players on this roster, Paris Ford, to an opt-out for NFL draft prep just on Monday of this week. And they have not played as well in the last month as they were the first 3-4 weeks of the season. So I just don't like the state that Pitt's in right now, and I think that if Florida State can avoid falling behind, which I think they can because I don't think Pitt's offense is getting any great shakes right now, and Jordan Travis can avoid having to kind of chase points and throw the ball down the field, I think Florida State's going to win this game, and I think they might win this game by more than people think. So if you can get Florida State still as favorites of less than a field goal, which you can right now as I'm recording this, I think you ought to strongly consider the Noles. I would stay away from Pitt at pretty much any number that you might find for this game. In the Big Ten this week, what is probably going to be an ugly, ugly game, but I guess which I'm now going to be obligated to watch because I'm going to have action on it. Michigan State and Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. I have Michigan State plus 7.5 in this game. Getting them at more than a touchdown was just very enticing to me after the way they played defense against Michigan on Saturday. The lines moved a little bit in my favor. I think that key number of 7 is really important here. If you've watched Iowa at all in the first 2 weeks of the season and their losses to Purdue and to Northwestern, their offenses looked extremely out of sorts. And this is also a program that going back to the offseason and even into this week has had considerable off-field issues that might not be priced in completely, particularly when you're looking at computer projection systems and how they might see this game. I just don't trust Iowa right now, and I think that Michigan State, from what we've seen from them so far, is a decent team. They did have a loss to Rutgers, but that was very turnover dependent and a lot of lost fumbles that didn't go their way. And I think that they can cover a touchdown, certainly more than that in this game. In the SEC, and wow, folks, I mentioned an ugly game in the Big Ten. I'm actually betting on maybe the ugliest game in the entire country this week in the SEC, and that is Vanderbilt at Mississippi State in Starkville. I have Vandy in this game plus 19. You might be able to get it at a better number than me, maybe getting like 19.5 or 20. Honestly, like heaven help me for betting on Vanderbilt football at this point in time. I have nothing good to say for myself. I am embarrassed about it, and I probably deserve to lose this bet. But if you just watch Mississippi State's offense every week of this season, except the first one against LSU, these guys have no idea what they are doing against defenses that drop 8 men into coverage and make Mississippi State's quarterbacks pick them apart. KJ Costello has not shown any capability to do that against SEC talent. Vanderbilt and SEC talent, do they have it? It's a little iffy. Certainly, this is the worst team and the least talented team in the conference. But I think that at this point, the book is out on Mississippi State. And I think that even a team in Vanderbilt's position, just by playing smartly and having a decent game plan, should be able to cover 19 points against an offense that has looked absolutely terrible. And if Mississippi State goes ahead and covers by 19, that would mean that they would have to have scored like 19, 20 points in this game, which, spoiler, they have not been doing since they dropped an inexplicable 40-something on LSU in the first week. In the Pac-12, which is back this week for the first time this season, I have Washington State and Oregon State in Corvallis. I have money on the Beavs in this game at +3. I think if you can get them at a field goal or better, you should do it. Washington State had, I think, a turbulent offseason with a coaching change. We mentioned Mike Leach, who's at Mississippi State. Nick Rolovich comes in from Hawaii to replace him. Some turbulence around players opting out and how that was handled inside the program, and just a lot to kind of contend with for a team in Washington State's position this offseason. On the other hand, Oregon State really made some strides forward last year under Jonathan Smith. They do have to replace their quarterback, but I think that I trust Jonathan Smith to have a good offensive plan together that on his own field, he might be able to cover a field goal or even 4 points if you're giving points to Oregon State in this game. So I like the Beavs. A big game in the American this week between Cincinnati and Houston. I think Cincinnati should be getting serious playoff consideration. And I have the Bearcats in this game at -10. That was an early opening pull for me on Sunday. The line has moved in my favor by a couple points to about 13 and a half. I would stay far away from Houston. And if you can get them at less than 2 touchdowns and your spirit is moved, I think Cincinnati is an interesting play, even at a worse number than I got. I just think Cincinnati's secondary is brilliant. I don't think that there are a lot of secondaries in the group of 5 that could play with Marquez Stevenson and kind of just take him out of play, the great wide receiver and kick returner for Houston. But I think Cincinnati's is good enough to do that. And I think that they're going to get a lot of pressure on Clayton Tune, who did not look particularly good in a loss to UCF last week. So I like the Bearcats there. In the Mountain West, I have Wyoming -3 visiting Colorado State in Fort Collins. I made the mistake, and that's on me, and I'm feel terrible about that, of betting on Colorado State last week against Fresno State. I didn't, I had some questions about myself doing that when I did it because of Colorado State having, kind of in the way that I mentioned with Washington State, a very rocky offseason, and it's a new coach in Steve Adazio. Maybe you shouldn't trust them. I should have listened to myself because they looked terrible in such a way that they were not covering wheel routes. They were blowing assignments all over the place on defense, and they also just looked lifeless on offense. So I'm fading Colorado State for the foreseeable future, unless the numbers get very, 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 very big for them. And the last pick that I want to share with you this week, and another one where it's a team that is probably in more disarray than even any of the others that I've just mentioned, and that is UMass. The Minutemen are visiting Marshall in a hastily scheduled game this week against maybe the best team, probably the best team in Conference USA. I have the under in this game at 57.5. I was excited to get it because I am not sure that UMass is going to score a single point in this game. And for this game to have 58 points scored, which is what it would take for that under not to hit, I really think there's a chance that Marshall would have to score 58 points. And they could, but Marshall does not move at a very fast pace. They tend to only get a relatively small number of possessions per game. This could even be so bad that there could be a running clock or something of that sort that would be a great friend to the under. I don't know why UMass is doing this Washington Generals routine where they just kind of schedule games against anyone who will play them and then get absolutely destroyed. But they are doing it, and they are playing Marshall, and I think it's going to be very, very ugly. So, I thought about even taking like Marshall -44.5, and that number was really big. I didn't want to do it, but I do think the under is good because I don't think UMass is going to make any contributions to getting that total busted this week, or really in any week that UMass might choose to play a game. So thank you very much for watching this video. Thanks for riding with me. Hopefully we'll both have a strong week at the Bread Factory this weekend, and we'll get back to it next week. Have a great one.